He's called you by virtue of your baptism, because that's the place where we're united to Jesus Christ. It is Jesus, the one who pleases the Father only. It is Jesus who the Father looks at and can see and has always seen. And it's us who is blind to that. So Jesus comes one with us. I think this story has more depth to it than just Jesus healing a blind man. It's actually Jesus steps into the blind man's position and then comes running to the Father for us. Jesus still now, before the Father, runs to him, pleads to him for us. As a human being, the one who got the human life correct, the one who didn't despair, the one who didn't trust in other things, the one who had the robe of righteousness for eternity, threw it off as this blind man threw off his cloak and ran to the Father, taking us with him. There's not many times, by the way, as a pastor, as I realised, I've only been a pastor just short of 19, 20 months now, and there's not many times people challenge you on all sorts of things and they complain about all sorts of things. One thing they don't usually complain about is what was up with that sermon. That's happened a few times. It was very rare. On my vicarage, one lady, she was a pastor's widow, so she was a pastor's wife. She said, hang on, I was vicar, Sean, at that point. And vicars really can't do anything wrong. But she was one lady who challenged me. And she said, hey, I'd love to catch up for coffee sometime and talk about that sermon. And I love that, right? And just an invitation to you, I love that. That's a great discussion to have. And so I ended up going around there, and my sermon that day was about the prodigal son. And as I was reflecting on the prodigal son that week, I was thinking, okay, if somebody is the prodigal son, it's about the story of the son coming home, right? And there's a big celebratory aspect to it. There's the father, the older brother, and the son who squanders everything, and the father waits. Really, the story, of course, what Jesus intended it was to the older brother. When I was reflecting on it, however, I thought, how does one go from being in the pigsty in a foreign land, then coming before the Father? Theologically, like on a serious level. So we've got somebody, let's say you've got somebody in mind who you know is in a foreign land, stranger to God, blinded at the moment, hasn't yet seen and been revealed to who God is. How does one go from there to here? To even consider, I might go and give thanks and praise to God for all He's done, and actually set my alarm on Sunday morning. How does that happen? Well, of course, it's not something that some idea that they conjure up on their own. It's actually the Spirit who inspires that and then brings them, right? So when I was reflecting on the prodigal son story, this is where I went. And I said, actually, Jesus becomes that prodigal son. He puts himself in the pigsty, goes to a foreign land, and is treated as one who squandered the Father's wealth. He was treated as one who squandered the Father's wealth. We squandered it, but Jesus was treated as if he did. Never did. And then he comes running back, takes us on his shoulders, or even just takes on our flesh and runs back to the Father, takes us back home. That's the gospel. And we got to talk about that, and it was great, and we come to a happy conclusion. The reason why I bring that up is because similarly here he is stepping in, takes us from blind men, blind women, takes us back to himself. And if that's the gospel, the question then is, how do we get that? If it's Jesus that the Father is happy with, if it's Jesus that represents us to the Father and takes us to the Father, and by his name we are declared clean, how then do we get Jesus? How do we become one with him? And of course, the scriptures testify to all the things that we value right here. Don't you know that those of us who are baptized into Christ Jesus were baptized into his death? We're being united with him in baptism. Our lives are hidden with Christ in God. All of that comes in a simple act. All of that comes when Jesus says and calls us back to himself once again and says, come and see who I am. This is you. You need to feed on me and I'll give you life. Feed on my words, feed on my body and blood, and you will have life in me.